So I think from what I've seen, I think there was an example, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, involving Woolworths. And I think there was a customer or consumer online that was asking for a particular product and why they didn't have it in store. And I think the response back from Woolworths was like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was kind of around the fact that they were like, okay, cool. So it wasn't in the store. So what do you like? What do you like? What do you expect? Like, what do you want us to do, basically? And I was like, gee, that's heavy because there's that what do you call it? That other Woolworths account, like the
what's it say?
yeah, exactly. So I thought it was that account.
Yeah.
Kanti, litmus, blue tick one. I was just like,
Litmus.
I was like, what the hell? Like, it was so out of the blue.
Drip on a daily, you know that I do that. Bitch, I clear, you do red. Call me the gas on it goes with my footwear. Got my little chain, you tube band. Drip on a daily, you know that I do that. Bitch,
Welcome to season 2 of Digital Dyans. Back like sweet back ribs. We are not hungry, but we are here to deliver and serve the latest in digital insights and whatever's on your mind. Please do remember to comment, like, subscribe, and share on YouTube and our various channels as well. If you like to listen, they say that we have the face for radio. You never know. People have their different preferences, but as Kolapo, as usual, I'm joined by the Mawisa's brothers. The Mawisa brothers. On my right, I've got
Siyabulela Mawisa, aka CA, aka Mawisa on Instagram. Don't forget it.
And I've got the baby-faced assassin on my left.
Sanele Mawisa, otherwise Mr. Maxan.
And today we are discussing something very close to our hearts. You know, when you send out those angry messages, I think for me, one of the first interactions we had with social pages and interactions was Bob the Banker. Or was it, you could actually take it back and take it to mix it.
So we're talking about community management.
Yeah, but it's the interaction itself, the bridge between clients, customers, the soft and hard conversations.
Yeah.
Maybe let's begin with the definitions before I take you on a time machine. We've got Gen Zs there. They're not sure, but we'll give you exactly what mix it used to be because I think the history is important. It was predated by those kind of platforms. And community managed itself. Can we get a definition there, Mawisa? I forgot the dictionary definition.
Yeah, so like just like you said, like it's the gap or the one that bridges between consumers and the brand, and it's very important because it's how basically the brand talks. It humanizes the brand. It makes it easier for consumers to talk to the brand and also get their queries and questions out of the way, and make it a very easy and an engaging platform for that to happen without getting on a phone and calling an 0800 toll-free number and putting on hold with quarter tunes for half a Saturday in your day. You just talk and they get back to you, and it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing, and it's very important. Very important.
I like it because it talks to the integrated marketing channel itself, like who is at the front, people at the sales. And you mentioned quite important things. I'll come to Sanele because you mentioned the brand discussion because he's our specialist there. So you mentioned brand, you mentioned call center. What is the correlation between businesses and that call center itself? I just want to get that before we move into community management and how to do it. Can you, just the call center, the integration for you in a company, in a business, you've got a call center, you've got your marketing. Where exactly does it fit in the integrated marketing?
That's actually, I'm glad that you actually asked that because when you do, and I've worked at a call center before, is that in a call center for any large organization, company, brand, is that it's a completely far removed section of the company. Like it is not spoken to the people that speak on the phones exactly the tonality, the language that must be used. It's just there's a script, stick to it. It's like you're not even buying into the brand yourself as a call center agent. But as a community manager, which is now in the integrated marketing funnel in itself, or the hub of it, they know exactly what the brand is, all the things about it, and they know how to speak to the customers.
Okay, so let's move to that very important section. The bra of brand management, of course, is Sanele. And Sanele, can you give us that correlation between the importance, rather, of could you overemphasize or the importance of community management for brands?
So I think, first of all, I think it would be remiss of me not to try and speak about the narrative currently about the way people perceive community managers, because I think that's probably the first biggest problem, especially in the industry and advertising and marketing, is that it's looked down upon. It's that call center of the digital agency. And I think for me, it shouldn't be like that, because it's underestimating its importance. Because as a brand, right, you selling a product or you offering a service. The people that consume your product or service are your customers. Those are the most important people. So if you don't talk to them and communicate and engage with them, you'll lose customers. And at the end of the day, if we're talking stuff like bottom line, that's the most important thing. So not taking that seriously, neglecting it, not having a strategy around it is very detrimental for all brands. And also being in the place or operating in the place where your customers and consumers are is so important, because that's where they live, that's where they speak about their lives and everything they want to talk about. So for a brand, you have to immerse yourself in their life and make them feel like they're a part of your life as well.
So we talk about all of those faux pas and how dangerous it is for a brand to be not to be in touch with how the community management is, tonality, those kind of things and definitions. I think those are general templates that you give to your community managers. Just to give a practical example, would you give us some examples of good and bad community management?
So I think from what I've seen, I think there was an example, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, involving Woolworths. And I think there was the customer or consumer online that was asking for a particular product and why they didn't have it in store. And I think the response back from Woolworths was like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was kind of around the fact that they were like, okay, cool, so it wasn't in the store, so what do you expect? Like, what do you want us to do, basically? And I was like, gee, that's heavy, because there's that what do you call it? That other Woolworths account, like the
Woolworths.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was that account.
Yeah,
the litmus blue tick one. I was just like, I was like, what the hell? Like, it was so out of the blue, and for me, it was just like I didn't know how to explain it. Like, it felt unexplainable, and I think a good community management. I think, to be honest, I've seen a few brands try, and in the way that they engage, is the tonality is so consistent in terms of how they've positioned themselves to consumers. So I don't have an actual example, but what would be a good example is the manner in which they communicate to their consumer, and it's easily recognizable that this is X brand or Y brand. Like, if the no profile picture, nothing, no logo, and the brand spoke to you, you should be able to pick up like, oh, that's that brand's tone.
Just to build on that, actually, like with the community management brands, they usually come from what I've seen, from takeaway joints. And if you look at like, it even started from the States with Wendy's. Wendy's is noticed for the way that they manage the community. Their community management is so important that if you do it right, you can build entire campaigns off of it.
I agree.
Like, you get insights from the consumers. That means that whatever that you're going to build coming out of it is going to be so on the nose for what they want that it will always be knocked out of the park. And if you, like in South Africa, you look at brands like Nando's, like KFC, you look at like Chicken Lick, and sometimes even like
crazy that you mentioned Nando's, top of mind.
yeah. And I mean, even like the stuff that you see about Nando's when they're doing those adverts, like even those static images, just talking about something that is current, is basically tied in with community management.
So linking both these discussions, what I heard from you, Sanele, was consistency. First, you find your persona, your tonality, and then you are consistent. I think for me, the holy grail, and shout out to Nando's, man. Like, I think I went back in time to kind of see what has been the journey in terms of how you communicate on online. That's why I talked about Mixit and all those kind of things in different platforms. And it's almost like we're coming full circle now with WhatsApp, which is one of the biggest and is the biggest platform in places like China and those kind of things. So in terms of the consistency itself. Like, obviously, you can't be consistent until you found yourself. Not everyone can be Nando's.
Yeah.
Just for people starting out, especially with their online stores, they're starting to do their social media management. What would you advise? Like, how do you start and understand your audience and tonality? What would you advise?
Yeah, so I think as a brand, the first thing you need to identify is how do you want to be perceived? Like, so you start off with what is your persona? So I think there are various archetypes. I think there's about 6 or 7, like the sage, the jester, the whatever, and it explains their kind of what that archetype is like and the way that they view things.
Not Achimorok, Achichai.
That one. So once you start off with that, then you build the actual personality of the person. Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be quirky? Do you want to be X, Y, and Z? And once you figure that out, you know that every time you speak, that has to be at the forefront of your mind. And the consistency is so important because that's where you build credibility, right? Because now people need to trust that the version of your brand that you present to them will always be like that. Because the moment that you show or you deviate from that, then it's like, okay, that's weird. Like, what's going on there? And for consumers, like, trust is a major thing, and especially in this country, in South Africa, is that we are very distrusting. We're very risk averse. So the slight chance of something looking or feeling off is just a negative road to go down.
So how do you innovate without being innovate while being consistent while you're building your persona? Because you need to get that consistency for people to learn that, okay, this is how they communicate. You almost teach them how to engage.
Yeah, so I think it's a difficult one because that innovation almost makes it seem like, okay, because you're developing as a brand, right? So when you're at stage 0 to stage 5, you're not in the same life cycle. But for me, that doesn't mean that your tone or persona should change. I think it can be adjusted or malleable based on certain situations.
Maybe the audience, like if the audience changes a little bit, then maybe you can adjust it in that way. And I think that's the humanization of like with the archetypes that you mentioned, making it a person is like actually literally humanizing the brand.
I like the malleable, adjustive aspect, because if you've got I'm thinking of like a 12-month marketing strategy that you can't, like, this is the strategy, but chief, you see what's happened. Those events we can't control.
But the tonality can't change too much. It really is like there's only so much room you can move in there. Yeah.
You don't want to react, you want to respond. I think probably that's one of the golden rules. And then in terms of always on versus campaign, what is always on and how does it differentiate from a campaign?
Yeah, so with always on, you've got content that runs out like throughout the year, and it's just to keep the consistency and keep top of mind to the consumers, and you just manage that community. Usually that's about like queries and complaints, just a quick avenue for consumers to go to get their problems sorted, or to ask questions about stock availability, price, things, very practical things. When it comes to a campaign gets launched, and with campaigns, obviously there's a lot of budget that is put into it. There's a lot of effort that's put into it. So there's more eyes on it. So for that one, it is almost imperative that you don't just handle people's complaints and queries. It's more proactive in the sense. You have to get people's feel, ask them questions, get them to engage with you back, make it like a back and forth as opposed to just,
cool. All right. And then that campaign mentality versus a always on, what is the fundamental difference? Is it the objectives? Because I think you mentioned, for me, I applied the business objectives of top of mind, brand awareness, maybe prospecting as well. That's what you do for the top funnel events. But in terms of the second part, when you're talking about
the campaign, and always on, and the fun. I actually forgot to.
Because you mentioned. Let me just double back, because there's always on, right? Where you mentioned the KPIs for always on. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So each campaign has its own objectives.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah. So like with always on, you're just keeping the boat afloat. Just keeping the show going. nothing too hectic. When it comes to campaign, it is booming. Like these are the peaks that you want to see in any kind of analytical report or data. When it's campaign time and there's no then what? Oh, then wow. That's
so I'll go back to that thing. What are the KPI metrics for a campaign versus the KPI metrics for a always on campaign? That's what I'm just trying to get to, because that's what they're going to ask you there in those boardrooms.
I mean, obviously, with every campaign, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Not every campaign has the same KPIs, but the one thing that a campaign should do is to build volume of activity on the pages, the owned pages, earned media. Everything must be booming because there's paid activity behind it. There's a lot of activity behind it. PR, everything.
Marketing,
so
radio.
Basically, the volume of activity that happens must definitely rise at exponential levels.
Which then moves me towards the difference between a campaign versus community management. Would you find that, Sanele, your colleagues are more excited about always on campaigns or always on, or the campaign itself in terms of community management? And how do you manage that? I mean, how do you get them excited at the same level for that work consistently?
Yeah, so I think people naturally get more excited by campaigns because there's, as Siya said, there's a lot of attention on it. There's a lot of money, the build up, the strategy. It's like you're waiting for this big project to finally go live. Whereas always on is just your day-to-day stuff. So naturally be more excited about that stuff when the campaign is about to launch.
Okay.
But you can't underestimate the importance of always on, because the always on is the thing that builds your community, right? It's the reliability. They know that you're always going to be there. You're not just going to disappear. If you need them, if there's a conversation you need to intercept or interject into and add your brand into that, they know you're always going to be there. So I wouldn't even place importance more on one or the other, but in terms of what would naturally be more enjoyable, it would definitely be campaigns.
Yeah, you can't even get people more enthused for always on than a campaign because it's just natural. But also another thing, I actually had something to say, but now it's
there's a universal there's a universal language here.
Sorry.
If it ain't about the money.
The thing that I wanted to say, like Sanele was talking about how important it is for always on because it builds the community.
Okay.
Is that once your community management is at its peak, it's good, it's amazing, that your community can manage itself even. So when people ask questions, other members of the community can answer because you've trained them, you've told them everything, and it makes everyone else's job so much easier.
Yeah.
Because by the time you see the question, it's already being answered by like 3 other people, and they're all correct because you've built that community.
And that's actually the work that has been built up over time by that community manager. So it's an important asset. I completely agree. In terms of changing the narrative about community management, I believe fervently in upskilling people, and the value lies always, as much as we want to pontificate money, revenue, and of course how much you remunerate people. How do we change the narrative around community managers? Because I won't talk about pricing, but it's significantly less. That's what I'm seeing. Beyond the idea of how it's thought of, the money that is remunerated to social media, to community management versus the other digital aspects, it's quite low.
Yeah, definitely. I think for sure, I think the payment, the remuneration is part of how you can change that narrative and giving them that respect in terms of how you view their importance in the business. So that's definitely one part of it. I think the second part of it is from the brands themselves. If their brand objectives and KPIs, and one of those or part of those are based purely in community management, like if you don't hit them, we are fucked, then that shows the importance, and you show your people in your agency how important it is, because that's the only way they're going to take it seriously, because at the end of the day, if you don't make your KPIs, then like you're screwed. So making sure that you place that importance monetarily and also changing the attitude changes when in the business you make it a key KPI.
But in money talks, can you change an attitude without the khabs? Is there other ways? Okay, let me make it a bit easier, or rather explain my point. Can you incentivize without money? You may be struggling, you may be an organization that doesn't exactly have money, but maybe you have access to, there's a lot of programs that are free. CETAs, check them out if you've applied for them. If you're a business online, you can actually get training. So are there other ways in which you can substantially and meaningfully incentivize someone. I'm not talking about a gift back. I'm not talking about 500 Rand at the end of the year here.
Yeah.
So how can we, maybe it could be, because we're talking about people's medical aid, people need to look after themselves. It could be transport. There's some way which the organization can incentivize to move closer than just the money. Are there ways that you can see maybe someone can work their way up in the organization? It can be a position that has, I think career management is a bit distorted in digital.
Yeah.
So maybe you can say to someone, listen, we'll try you out at community management, and then your career progression will be managed. Because then someone will have, will be more committed when they know that they're part of a plan.
Of a bigger plan, yeah. And I think, like, to be really honest, in terms of the incentivization of community managers and getting the remuneration that they deserve, is going to be a two-way street. So, and like we were speaking about before, like the importance of community management can actually get to the point where entire campaigns can be built off of it. Is that it needs to be, first of all, like, just be proactive with it. And like you're talking about upskilling, go back, tell the brand, yo, this is what the people are saying. I think that maybe we should talk about this. And that will basically like direct the way that the other content around the brand will go. And maybe not for the whole thing, for the other greater strategies, but for the times that you want to give back to the audience, to give back to the community, just like show them that we care about you, we hear, we listen, and do some campaigns for them, like solely for them, and that could create return on investment that could somehow trickle down back to the community manager if your agency is not an asshole.
But yeah, basically establishing value. And you do that in various ways. We know that we're all challenged. I think curiosity and that proactiveness is what always drives you, and people will recognize you for that. But if you are a community manager, please, this show is driven purely by you and your comments. Everything related to what we speak about, if you'd like to mention, or if anything's been in your periphery when it comes to the ad of the week, for example, we really need your opinion on that, because that's our KPI. You are our KPI. So as we wrap up the show, it's been a pleasure once again, and we will be joining you again next week.
Yes. Don't forget, subscribe, like, comment, YouTube, Digital Dyans. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can like our page on Facebook. We are also on podcasts. You can listen to us if you don't like our faces. I think we have a couch of sixes here. Strong sixes.
6.5.
6.5.
Speak for yourself.
You got that video popping. But you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Please don't forget. And
one more thing. Sorry. Just one more thing. Tools. Community management. Utula. Oh, look, I'm all about automation.
Toolkit.
We are going into. I really want to speak about this. Sorry. Is there any automation or quick wins? I know my biggest challenge.
I thought you wrapped up.
Fuck, we have to get that one in. What?
Stop a land that's a lip passing a shot in my own. We got a Galilei shot. Pull them tattoo